r/ask Reddit. Who was crazy until they were right all along? Hemingway. Before he took his life he became extremely paranoid the FBI was following him. His wife and people around him just thought he was mentally ill and grew deeply concerned. Hemingway went as far as getting electrotherapy at a psychiatric hospital to try and help with the perceived delusions. Turns out the FBI had been following and bugging him for years according to declassified files. In comparison, there was a sci-fi writer Philip K. Dong who was convinced the FBI was monitoring him, so he kept sending demand letters that they release his file. His daughter was interviewed years after he passed. Extras on Scanner Darkly DVD. If I recall correctly, I heard you've actually seen your father's FBI file and it is quite large. Yes, it's rather large, but the only thing in there are copies of his demand letters. That dude who suggested that it might be a good idea to wash your hands before performing surgery. A gentleman never washes his hands. In the days of landlines, my phone was tapped. I could hear a strange hollow sound and I knew someone was listening. I had had a bad accident and was home for almost a year and involved in a lawsuit. I told my attorney about it. He told me the insurance company wouldn't bother. I mentioned it to my roommate. She told me I was crazy. I began to notice a van parked on my street. It was there for several days. I thought I was under surveillance. My attorney and my roommate said I was crazy. A person came to my door asking questions about the neighborhood. They claimed to be from a real estate company. They didn't go to other houses. I thought I was being watched. My attorney and my roommate said I was crazy. Several weeks later, my roommate's boyfriend was arrested for stealing physical and intellectual property from IBM. It was the beginning of the tech era and he stole millions in hardware and software and ideas. We were being watched to see if we were involved. The phone was tapped. We were under surveillance. We were taped. I wasn't crazy after all. Quite creepy, but a relief that you were correct. Ludwig Boltzmann. His equations and formulas explained the physical properties of matter, but as it went against the then accepted laws of physics, he was ridiculed and ignored for years while fighting for atom theory to be accepted. He took his own life just 3 years before Ernest Rutherford discovered the nucleus of an atom, proving Boltzmann's theory. The dingo ate my baby lady got made fun of constantly, most notably in Seinfeld, and I believe went to jail because nobody believed her. Turns out a dingo ate her baby. She is still made fun of. This one was beyond ducked up. Your child is taken from you and killed by wild animals. Then you're jailed for murdering your own child and ridiculed the world over for your lame story as to what actually happened. Then, yep, being right the whole time. The ex-husband of my ex-girlfriend. Turns out he wasn't the crazy one after all. He kept trying to tell me, and if I would have listened from the beginning I could have saved 4 years of my life. I'm so sorry, man. There are always two sides of every story, and unfortunately, sometimes we meet the liars first. Good riddance, and I hope the new space in your life is filled by someone much more deserving of your love and affection. Sinead O'Connor. Younger Redditors might not know who she is, but she was a singer/songwriter from Ireland who was a staple in the alternative music scene during the late 80s and early to mid 90s, who had some crossover hits. Anyway, at the height of her popularity she was the musical guest on Saturday Night Live after cancelling an earlier scheduled spot in protest against the guest host, which was some dumbass stand-up comic from the 80s called Andrew Dice Clay. As Scott Thompson described him, it's as if someone took your grandmother, the one who can't speak English, and taught her to swear phonetically, gave her a special on HBO and made her a star. During her performance she sang an a cappella version of Bob Marley's War, changing the lyrics to make it about child sexual abuse instead of racism. At the end of the performance she shouted something like "fight the real enemy" and ripped up a picture of the Pope. In the following weeks people lost their shit, and on the next episode of Saturday Night Live they had at least 3 sketches that tore her apart. A few years later the Catholic sex abuse scandal broke internationally. Courtney Love was warning everyone about Harvey Weinstein back in the mid-90s, but everyone just wrote her off. If you're a woman in this industry and Weinstein invites you to one of his parties, don't go. If Courtney Love, of all people, tells you not to go to a party, you should really not go to that party. The doctor who found COVID in China and was silenced and died in prison from COVID. When the Civil War broke out, everyone on both sides thought it would be a quick victory. However, Sherman kept saying it would be a bloodbath that would drag on for years. His superiors decided he was insane and sent him out west to fight Indians, Native Americans, just to get rid of him. After it all came true and they needed some better generals, they said maybe we should bring back that Sherman guy. Yes, public opinion is rarely kind towards realists, pessimists during wars. During the American Revolutionary War, the British also felt the same towards Cassandras like General Gage and later Clinton. One was sacked, the other's army denuded in favor of Cornwallis. Rather than accept a war of attrition, the British government preferred foolhardy yet aggressive generals like Burgoyne and Cornwallis, and reaped the consequences. Before World War II, Japanese ultranationalists wanted to assassinate Admiral Yamamoto, the successful planner of Pearl Harbor, because he kept saying inconvenient truths like in 6 months the Americans will overwhelm us. Since America can easily outproduce Japan's manufacturing capacities and rebuild massive fleets. Courtney Love and her quip about Weinstein. It's still wild to me that people will villainize someone while knowing damn well they are speaking the truth. When I was in Boy Scout camp, we had this counselor named Don. He was kind of odd. He knew everything about trees and only really talked about trees. We had just gotten back from a hike that Don was on with us and we were just sitting around talking and he suddenly goes, "You know, they're gonna let girls into Boy Scouts soon." We were all like, "Yeah, okay Don." But sure enough, less than 3 years later, they did it. That's good. I was expecting Don to be a pedophile. Corey Feldman. Dude went on national TV to tell everyone that there was a network of sexual abusers in Hollywood, and that he himself had been abused, and people laughed at him and shunned him. And then it came out that pretty much everything he was saying was true. Barbara Walters essentially scolded him for doing it, but to me, those reactions are sort of the equivalent of those who've just completed paying massive student loans don't want the next generation to have benefits of free or reduced price schooling. With how old Barbara Wawa is, she must have gone through a shitload of sexual harassment in her early days. That one journalist Gary Webb that uncovered the truth that the CIA aided and abetted Nicaraguan Contra rebels in funneling cocaine into inner city communities. The Radium Girls. When radium had just come to the US and was being marketed on dials for Warren watches, girls used their lips to fix the paintbrushes to make their numbers and dials perfect. Eventually they started suffering horrible, painful experiences due to the radium. These girls fought for years to figure out A, what was wrong with them, B, who was responsible, and C, how they were going to pay their bills, support their families. It's a horrible injustice. These girls needed support and validation that they weren't crazy, that it was radium. And it took far too long and too many deaths for it to happen. Me. About my, now disowned, cousin. He kept stealing things from me which my family felt was no big deal, but it escalated. It went from stealing candy, to my things, to cash. And after that I asked them how much longer they would support him and call me selfish for not sharing. The line was finally crossed when he stole our grandmother's credit cards and her car. She finally wrote him off. This was after he had stolen all of her jewelry, including the last present anniversary ring my grandfather was ever to give her. Oh. But he tried to say that our family kicked him out because he is gay. No, none of us cared about that. It was because he is a thief. His friends have bailed him out of jail and then dropped him when he steals from them. But he claims the world is just unfair to him. Now he tells his pity story and milks the "my family disowned me because I'm gay" to everyone he begs from. I learned this when he tried to do it to one of my friends. Martha Mitchell. She was the wife of Nixon's AG, John Mitchell. She was outspoken in the extreme and was one of the first to talk openly about what really happened Watergate. Since she was also known to love her martinis, she was widely written off as a drunk, crazy woman. Behind the scenes, a White House doctor began heavily sedating her and her husband locked her away from the press. No one believed her until Nixon resigned and the story came out. To this day, most people only remember her as that loudmouth, Martha Mitchell. In the 2012 presidential debates between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, both were asked what the greatest foreign threats to America were. Mitt Romney said Russia, and became the butt of jokes on both sides of the aisle for it. Didn't he know the Cold War was over? Anyway, There's plenty about the guy I don't like, but I think about that answer a surprising amount as politics unfurls now. I almost feel like I'd have to apologize if I ever met him for how stupid I and everyone else found that at the time. One of our D&D party members was hiding in a tree when the rest of the party was trying to negotiate and we got captured except the one in a tree. Jon Snow, yes, that's his name, was laughed at for believing that the multiple cholera outbreaks could be traced back to a specific source and that it was due to contaminated water, essentially making him one of the fathers of epidemiology. He has a fascinating life that went beyond that as well. Winston Churchill. He was very much out of favor at the time that he began warning about German rearmament. In the first volume of his retrospective on the Second World War, he is emphatic that it was history's most unnecessary and preventable war. Doubt anyone sees this but duck it. Learned recently my grandpa was right all along. My grandpa was a dentist. He mentored my current dentist. Saw my dentist the other day and he was going on and on about how my grandpa was doing things 40 years ago that he was mocked for endlessly by the dental community and told he was crazy. Those things he was doing are now being seen as modern dentistry today. My dentist said he feels so happy for my grandpa and wishes he was alive to see this. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.